So hello, my name is Patty Hubbard, and I am the Outdoor Recreation Grant Planner at Missouri State Parks, and this is the 2026 Grant Application General Information Workshop for the Land and Water Conservation Fund grant. So what is the Land and Water Conservation Fund, or LWCF for short? The LWCF is a federal grant program that started in 1965 with the passage of the Land and Water Conservation Fund Act. The fund is supported by revenue that is generated by offshore oil and gas drilling leases. The purpose of the act is to assist in preserving, developing, and ensuring that all citizens of the U.S., including both present and future generations, have access to outdoor recreation. The Act provides funding for federal land acquisition and development, as well as providing financial assistance to states in planning, acquiring, developing land and water areas and facilities to be used for outdoor recreation. This program is considered a pass-through grant program. The National Park Service is the federal agency who manages the program. The funding is passed through to each state. Here in Missouri, it is given to the Department of Natural Resources. At DNR, we sub-grant at least a portion of the funding through a competitive grant program. The amount of money that is available to grant each year depends on how much is appropriated by Congress and allotted to us by the National Park Service. So the nice thing about LWCF is that it supports both big recreational areas like national parks and small outdoor recreational like community parks and public schools. This map, being small, makes it very hard to read, I know, but it shows all the projects that we have funded here in Missouri through 2024. You can see the number and distribution of projects throughout the state and how much the program has benefited both rural and urban areas. In the 60 years of LWCF has been around, we have funded over $114 million worth of projects across the state. Every single county in Missouri here has at least one LWCF project. We currently have over 1,800 projects throughout the state and approximately 1,200 protected LWCF parks. So, who can apply for LWCF funding? This will include both state and local governments, which means cities and county municipalities, public school districts, and public universities. The LWCF program can only fund public entities. Non-for-profits such as 501(c)s or for-profit entities are not eligible sponsors for an LWCF grant. How does this funding work? This is a 50-50 matching grant program, which means of the total project costs, the federal government will pay up to 50% and your local match must be at least 50 cents. So in other words, every dollar spent on the project, 50 cents can be reimbursed by the grant if the costs are eligible, and then you are responsible for covering the other 50 cents. The matching share portion, or your part of the project, can be a combination of cash, in-kind labor or equipment use, or donations from a third-party donor. In order to be used as match, it must meet the same requirements as the grant request. This is a reimbursable program, which means you have to spend some money up front in order to request a reimbursement. The maximum amount that you can request per project is $500,000. The minimum amount that can be requested is $25,000 on the federal side, meaning that the minimum total project is $500,000 and the maximum project, if you want to keep it a 50-50 grant, is $1 million. We are not sure how much our 26 apportionment is, but we are anticipating that it will look very similar to our 24 grant round, which was $5.1 million. And then we do keep a portion of that here at Missouri State Parks, and the remainder of that is given out in the competitive grant round. So what types of projects are eligible? In the open project selection process, or OPSP for short, in Appendix B is the grant application guide. And on page 2 through 4 of that guide, or Adobe page 25 to 27 if you're following along digitally, is a fairly comprehensive list of the types of eligible projects. They can be categorized in a few ways. First is the acquisition of either land or water for public outdoor recreation. This includes acquiring new parkland for development as a standalone park or new acreage that is adjacent to an existing park that you are expanding. It can also be used to complete multi-purpose projects where one component of the project is outdoor recreation and the other component is not. A good example is a water reservoir. Grant funding can be used on the part of the project that is considered outdoor recreation. The second use of LWCF funds is for the development of new facilities and the renovation of existing facilities. For example, if you have a park that's 20 to 30 years old and you need to update some of the facilities in the park to meet current ADA standards, LWCF can help with that. If the park received an LWCF grant in the past, it can also receive new grant funding to update or renovate the facilities that received that funding in the past, especially if you have not received a grant in 40 to 50 years. LWCF also pays for a combination of acquisition and development and or renovation. For example, let's say you own or manage an existing park. You have an opportunity to acquire land adjacent to your existing park, and you want to build a playground on the new land. LWCF can help with that. Please be aware, all parks that receive LWCF funding must be maintained for public outdoor recreational use in perpetuity. Here are some photos of some of our LWCF projects that we have funded in the past several years. As you can see, there's a wide range of it, from a skate park to an ADA compliant playground, to restrooms, to splash pads, to pavilions or trails. Here's some more photos. So you can see there's a high school track, tennis courts, pickleball courts. This is a large universal playground here. We also do camping sites and campgrounds. And then, of course, you have your fishing docks. These are all eligible projects. So like I said, if you take a look at page 2 through 4 of the grant or of the OPSP, you will see a list of more eligible projects. Now, here's a list of a few things that are not eligible for funding. For a more complete list of what is not eligible, you can go to page 5 or Adobe page 8 of that application guide, Appendix B of the OPSP. So what is not eligible? So support facilities that contribute to indoor activities such as meeting rooms, restaurants, luxury cabins, furnishing, food preparation equipment, and kitchens. Indoor facilities for public recreation such as rec centers and indoor pools. Areas and facilities designed primarily for semi-professional or professional arts or athletics. Restoration or preservation of historic structures. Community gardens that are planned for a commercial enterprise. Boating equipment such as buoys, ropes, life jackets, and boats. And informational materials such as brochures, or leaflets. Before you fill out your application, please make sure that you're looking to make sure that you have an eligible project. So how do you apply for an LWCF grant? Well, the process is fairly simple, but if you feel overwhelmed as you start filling out the paperwork, please call us and we can help you out. The grants management section information is listed here on the screen. The phone number there is mine, and then we have a general email plus the website for where you can download the application. And that link there for the website is also where you can access these recordings. Plus, if you want to register for any more of the workshops, you can go there. So your first step is to go out to our website and download the grant application form and the open project selection process. So that is the directions for filling out the application. Plus, it also includes the timeline for the grant. You need to fill out the application form, save it, print it, and mail it in. Final applications cannot be emailed. Grant application packets must be postmarked or received by us by November 14th of 2025. We do recommend that you submit the final application before November 14th because any final applications received before November 14th will be reviewed, and if items are missing or the application is not signed, we will give you until the end of the business day on the 14th to submit any missing information or to sign the application. If the application is received on November 14th or after, the application will be accepted as is. No corrections or additional information will be accepted. And so you have to mail 2 hard copies of the application and all supporting documents to us by November 14th. After all the applications have been received, the application packets are then sent to our LWCF Internal Advisory Board for scoring. This board is made up of Park and Rec professionals. They will look at your application individually and score it based on the criteria listed on the score sheet at the end of the OPSP. The grant application guide explains how many points are allotted to each section. After scoring all the applications, the board comes together as a group in January for the norming process, where they discuss the individual merits of each application. They may adjust their scores accordingly to the strengths or weaknesses identified by another group member that they may have overlooked. At the end of the meeting, they submit a list of projects they recommend for funding. The grants management section will submit that list to our division director for her preliminary approval. Once we get her approval, we contact the applicants of the projects that have preliminarily been selected and schedule a pre-approval site inspection to verify that everything in the application is as it was described. We also will conduct our risk assessment at that time to evaluate your capacity of complying with the requirements of the grant. So us contacting you to schedule a pre-approval site inspection and risk assessment, which usually happens in late January to early February, is your clue that you have made it to round 2 of the application process. Once we complete those pre-approval site inspection and risk assessments, we will put together a list of those projects recommended for funding to send to our division and department directors for approval. After projects have been approved by the department, we will prepare draft applications for the National Park Service that have to be submitted by mid-March. All applicants will be notified of the results of the application review process by the end of June. Projects that are approved by the National Park Service will be uploaded into Grant Solution when the National Park Service grant round opens, which is usually sometime between December and April when they get their grant round open. And then based off the past 2 years, the notice of award and projects agreements will be set to applicants in 2027, sometime probably between May and September, after we have received the federal award from the National Park Service. There is the chance that these could get awarded in October of 26, but it is kind of rare for that to happen. So just plan on your funding for this grant round to be May to September of 27. Once we receive your federal award, you will be attending the mandatory grant administration workshop, and then you will learn about all the requirements of the grant process, including the long-term stewardship requirements. You will then have 2 years to complete the grant once it has been awarded from the date of that agreement. So one thing that is important to remember is that you cannot start any type of development activities, such as clearing the area of trees or removing old equipment or grading the area in preparation of the project, or acquire any property until you have a signed agreement with DNR. Doing any type of clearing, demoing, or grading ahead of an award will negate the environmental review process that the National Park Service must complete for each project. And if this is done, the project will be ineligible for funding. Generally, any cost incurred before a financial assistance agreement has been signed are not eligible. The only exception to the rule are the pre-approved planning costs, which we will talk about here a little bit later. The LWCF grant will reimburse for some pre-award planning costs, such as design work, environmental reviews, or a cultural resource survey. All pre-award planning costs must be explicitly detailed in your application in order to claim the expenditures. We also want you to consider some specific regulations that you can consider when planning the scope of work and budget for your project, such as the Americans with Disability Act, or ADA. You will need to make sure that you have accessible parking and routes within the park that connect to all facilities that are going to receive LWCF funding. The Build America, Buy America will be discussed on the next slide, and the Uniform Relocation Assistance and Real Property Acquisition Policy Act will be discussed fully during the workshop on Thursday afternoon for the real property acquisition. So the Build America, Buy America Act is a requirement that National Park Service has added to the federal award, and we have guidance about which projects need to meet BABA for short. As required by Section 7914 of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, also known as the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which is Public Law 117-58, on or after May 14th of 2022, none of the funds under a federal award that are part of a federal financial assistance program for infrastructure may be obligated for a project unless all the iron and steel products, including the coatings, are made in America. All the manufactured products used in the product are produced in America, and the construction materials used in the product are produced in the United States, unless you're under an approved waiver. The definition of infrastructure per the law includes the structures, facilities, and equipment for, in the United States, roads, highways, bridges, public transportation, dams, ports, harbors, and other maritime facilities, intercity passenger and freight railroads, freight and intermodule facilities, airports, water systems, including drinking and water systems, electrical transmission facilities and systems, utilities, broadband infrastructure, and buildings and real property. Infrastructure includes facilities that generate, transport, and distribute energy. In February of 2024, Missouri State Parks sent a waiver request to the National Park Service for a splash pad. NPS determined that the project did not fund in the enumerated categories of infrastructure within the scope of the Buy America preference, and a waiver was not needed. In keeping with the determination of the National Park Service, Missouri State Parks considers the following facilities and amenities to fall outside the definition of infrastructure as defined by the Build America, Buy America Act. These include, but are not limited to, playgrounds, splash pads, spray gardens, swimming pools and swimming beaches, ball fields and sports courts, dog parks, running tracks, pavilions and shelters, community gardens, restrooms, parking lots, and accessible routes. Short utility line, water, and sewer lines to connect facilities and amenities to main utility lines are also excluded from requiring BABA. If your project includes major infrastructure, such as primary park roads, main utility lines, and large drinking water and wastewater systems, then these components will likely meet the definition of infrastructure, and you will need to meet the requirements of the Build America, Buy America Act. If you are unsure if your project meets the requirements of BABA, please feel free to give us a call. So hopefully everyone was able to download the application and the OPSP. If not, you can download the forms from the Land and Water Conservation Fund website. And as you can see, I've circled the things that need to be downloaded here from the website. We do recommend that you use Adobe for downloading and completing the application, because in the past we have been contacted by individuals who have issues with the forms when using other programs such as Google Docs. So please use Adobe. The free version of Adobe works for filling out this application. And like I said, you should download it to your computer, save it to your computer, and work off the computer version that you've saved. Please note that there have been changes to this application, especially in the environmental review section. So please make sure that you're filling out the 2026 LWCF application. Applications submitted on previous year application forms are not eligible to be scored. So please definitely make sure that you are doing the 26 project application. Make sure that you work on the environmental review process early, because some of the processes in that can take up to 30 days to get replies back from other agencies. A complete application package, which includes 2 copies of the project application and all supporting documents, must be postmarked or received by November 14th, 2025. So once again this year, we are hosting a series of 4 workshops that will break the application down by section. Each workshop should last between about an hour to an hour and a half. You can decide which workshops to attend, and a copy of all the workshops will be posted online by September 10th if you are unable to attend the live session. The first workshop will be tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. and will cover the following questions on the application. It will cover the project and development and scope of work questions, which is 53 through 58, project need, which is 59 and 60, partnership question, which is 66, and then the budget and budget detail questions, which is 67 through 74. So the first workshop is all about the scope of work and the budget. Then tomorrow afternoon, At 1 p.m. will be the project development and LWCF boundary map. This workshop will cover project location questions, which is 12 through 28, project management and stewardship questions, which are 29 through 34, and the project planning questions 61 through 65. There will also be examples of what LWCF boundary maps should look like, whether you're doing a small park to a large park of 1,000 acres or more. We'll have examples of both. Then on Thursday morning at 9 a.m., I will be doing the environmental review section of the application. This workshop will cover questions 75 through 82. I will show you maps and reports that you're going to need in order to complete this section. And then, of course, the last workshop will be Thursday afternoon at 1 p.m., and this is the acquisition of real property. This workshop is for anyone that will be acquiring land, whether through purchase or donation, as part of the project, and it's going to cover questions 35 through 52 of the application. We will also be covering the Uniform Appraisal Standards for federal land acquisition. So if you are acquiring property, whether it's being donated to you and you're using that as match, or if you're purchasing it, you should really look at attending this workshop. You can register for all these workshops at the grant application workshop, which you can access that link through the LWCF website. And it's also here at the bottom of the slide. So now I just want to cover a couple of the questions within the application. This is the very first section. This is your general information that you were providing, questions 1 through 8 about the project sponsor. So this is the person, or this is the entity that is applying for the funding. So the first 2 questions ask you to provide information about you as an organization. This should be filled out based on the entity that is applying for the funding. Please make sure you use a mailing address here. That way, when I mail out letters, you'll make sure you receive them. So if you have a P.O. box, put the P.O. box there, please. Question 2 asks for the project sponsor's UEI, which is the 12-character alphanumeric ID from sam.gov. If your organization does not already have a UEI, you need to obtain one by going out to sam.gov and registering to get one. Please do this early if you don't already have it, because once again, this can take up to a month or more to get your UEI. And also look at the fact that if you do have a UEI, when does it expire? So if your one has expired or getting ready to expire, you need to make sure you get that up to date as well. Question 3 asks about the application preparer. So this is the person who is preparing and writing the application. This does not have to be someone from your agency. This can be someone from your regional planning commission. It can be a grant writer that you've hired to write your grant for you. So I just need the information about them, because if we do have questions about the application or the application packet, we will reach out and contact this person. Question 4 asks you to provide who will be the project manager of the project if the project is selected. This is the individual that we will be working with on your project if you are selected for funding. This should be the person who is going to be overseeing and responsible for the expenditures and reimbursements once you have been awarded a grant. This is also the person who will be asked to attend that mandatory grant administrative workshop. Question 5 through 8 ask about your federal and state representative and regional planning commission. Question 5 asks for the U.S. House of Representative member. Question 6 asks for the Missouri House Representative member. and 7 is for the Missouri State member. These are all people that if you guys do get an award or when you finish your project, will be receiving letters from us letting them know that a project has been completed in their area. Question 9 through 11 asks you to provide information about your organization's background and prior performance with DNR. As you notice, this is the first section where you're actually getting scored points. It's worth 10 points. So pursuant to 2 CFR 200, we are required to conduct a risk assessment of all applicants to ensure that they are being good stewards of taxpayer dollars and that we are only awarding grants to entities that have the capacity to manage the project. The answers given in this section provide some information about your organization. If you are selected to move into round 2, you will also be asked to provide additional information for this risk assessment, such as copies of your most recent audit, accounting policies, and your procurement procedures. Make sure to answer these questions based on the organization listed in question 1. So, for example, if the City of Missouriville Park and Recreation Department is applying for the grant, this information should be about the Recreation Department and not about the city. And vice versa, if the city's the one applying and not the Park and Rec Department. In question 11, please notice that we are asking you to provide performance history information for grants received by Missouri DNR as a whole and not just the LWCF program. Only talk about grants from the past 10 years, so anything from 2016 through the present, and make sure that you provide adequate information. So this could be if you've gotten scrap tire grants, if you've received an RTP grant, if you've had a historic preservation grant. We want to know this information. This helps us when we do the risk assessment in the future. But you also want to put your LWCF grants down too. So question 35 of the application, and this is, will real property be acquired as part of this project, whether by purchase, donation, or lease? If you answer no to this question, click no, and then you're going to skip down to question 53. And the nice thing is you don't need to attend the real property acquisition workshop scheduled for Thursday if your answer is no. If you answer yes, because you are acquiring property through purchase, donation, or lease as part of this project, I do recommend that you attend the real property acquisition workshop on Thursday at 1 p.m. to learn how to fill out this section of the application. And this will take you, will answer 35 through 52 during that workshop. The last section I want to go over is the last page of the application. And this is where we have the supporting documentation checklist. The supporting document checklist is provided on the application as an aid to project sponsors and should be completed before submitting the application packet. The supporting documents are required documentations to support your application and must be included with your application packet. For a detailed summary of each required item on this checklist, you can go to the OPSP Appendix B, which is the grant application guide on pages 10 through 12, or Adobe page 33 through 35. When you are reading the OPSP, you will notice that some of the words are highlighted purple in each question that indicates that you need a supporting document to go with this question. In order for your application to be considered complete, you must provide all the information listed in this checklist unless it says if applicable, and in which case it is up to you to determine if that applies to you. So, for example, there's the school community agreement. This is a requirement for all schools that are applying, so they must provide this. But a city would not need to do this. The instructions also include template languages for many of the items on this checklist. So an example, the Missouri State E-Verify is included on page 14 through 17 or Adobe page 37 through 40. You will need to fill this out and return it with your application packet. And I will tell you this is probably one of the most things that is missed most often in an application packet is the Missouri E-Verify. Everyone always turns in their federal, but they forget about the Missouri E-Verify. You have to send in both. There are also templates for the resolution, the financial assurance letter, the school community agreement. There are template letters for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers that you can use when you're doing the environmental section. Remember that incomplete or handwritten applications will not be scored. Then at the bottom of this is the certification of responsible person is the signature section. A responsible official of the sponsoring agency, which should be the individual that is named in the resolution, must sign and date this section to complete the application, or the application will not be scored. Examples of responsible officials include mayors, city managers, or administrator, park and rec department directors, and chief financial officers. For public school districts applying for funding, the superintendent must be the responsible official and the resolution must be passed by the school board in order to apply. The responsible official does not need to be the contact person listed on the application, but does need to read the application and have an understanding of the requirements of administering the grant, including the long-term stewardship requirements, should one be awarded. The responsible official cannot be an independent grant writer who is not affiliated with the agency. Unsigned or incomplete applications will be ineligible for funding. So please remember the final application packet, which includes 2 hard copies of the application and the supporting documents, must be postmarked or received by us by November 14th, 2025. If you guys do have questions, please feel free to contact me. My phone number is up there. There's the email address that you can ask questions to, and I will be able to help you answer any questions that you guys have about the application and stuff.